Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:30 PM and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Call the roll. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby?
Here.
Mr. Helmer?
Here.
Ms. Konick?
Here.
Mr. Kurth?
Here.
Ms. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Seidel?
Here.
Ms. Spindler?
Here. I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the executive session superintendent contract renewal to cover July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2026. B, the approval of closed session minutes of January 22nd. C, the employment performance compensation matters pertaining to staff.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Helmer. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth?
Yes.
Mr. Helmer?
Yes.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
Ms. Konick?
Yes.
Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Seidel?
Yes.
Ms. Spindler?
Yes.
We are moving into closed session and return to open session around 7 o'clock.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Test 1 2. Testing 1 2. Test 1 2.
It is now 7:09, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Do we have anybody for privilege of the floor this evening?
No.
I do not have a president's message, so we'll move on to the administrative team report. We have our superintendent's update and the student representative update.
Yeah, so I did want to mention that we've actually, last Friday evening, held another one of our events as part of our concert series at New Berlin West. We actually had the largest crowd. It may not seem real large, but it was large, and it was a great time of almost 250 people at the concert. It was very well received, great time by all, great music, and it starts bringing in additional revenue for the Education Foundation of New Berlin. So, congrats to Patrick and the team, Julie Cordero. She's going to be here later this spring to kind of talk about some of the highlights of our events and the work that we're doing, specifically just fundraising in general from our foundation. When she started back about 3 years ago, for that last quarter, we raised only $10,000. Then 2 years ago, she raised, her and the foundation raised $225,000, and then they've closed out the last calendar year at almost $250,000. So this is outside of all of our naming rights that we've been working on as well with Dave Cody and others. And so certainly really happy and proud about our work there. I'd also like to thank our staff and our students that helped us welcome the state superintendent last week, who was here on a visit for Career and Technical Education Month. If you may not be aware, February is Career and Technical Education Month in the state of Wisconsin. We were her first stop of visits across the state of Wisconsin. It was a great opportunity for our students and our staff to highlight and showcase the incredible offerings that we have for our students, both at 7th through 12th grade. She was specifically looking at middle and high school offerings. So we actually gave her a tour of several different places throughout the building here at Eisenhower. And then we were actually surrounded in this room with various groups led by teachers and students themselves. And so certainly we should all be very proud of what our staff do. But certainly we had a great representation. Obviously the state superintendent, the Department of Public Instruction, were extremely impressed with our work, as well as our post-secondary partners and local employers that have helped us build this career and technical education program, otherwise known as our college, career, and life readiness programming in the school district of New Berlin. So thank you, Janet, for representing the school board at that event. And any additional comments, Janet, about that day?
It's just really impressive to see all the things that our students do, and all of the student organizations where they're able to take those things that they're learning in the classroom and applying them. Of course, my heart has always been with the robotics team, but I love the build team. That was great to see too. We even had business. The DECA group was here, as well as HOSA for the health. So just putting a plug for parents that are listening. There's so much for your kids, and take a look. I really highly suggest your child gets involved in at least one of those organizations. And I know my 3 have benefited greatly from being involved in a student organization. So.
Yeah, Janet, we have taken note too. One of the things that Janet mentioned during the event was, what is it that we do to promote not only the course offerings, but also these co-curricular offerings as well. Between Dave Kelly and our executive team, we'll be looking at how we can better promote those opportunities. We do have the academic career planning nights. We do have social media presence with each of these organizations to a certain degree, but we can certainly do better because, again, the notion is we want our students to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves in our great school district. So, again, just wanted to thank our students and staff for that. I'll hand it over to Claire.
Okay, as second semester continues, students are working hard and excelling academically and athletically. In the classroom, students are learning through projects, essays, and experiments. Eisenhower staff and students would not be here without our school counselors. We were able to celebrate Miss Meese, Mr. Anoy, and Miss Losey's contributions to our school last week. Another thank you to 3 members of the wonderful staff. This past Saturday, Eisenhower Middle School students had a special night at their winter dance with the theme of A Night in Paris. Ike Best Buddies is having an upcoming event on February 15th for s'mores making. The Eisenhower Science Team Club is exploring the idea of starting an astronomy club. They met last week to gauge the interest of middle and high school students to plan for the future. DECA is currently fundraising for the Polar Plunge event February 24th. All donations go to Special Olympics. National Honor Society is wrapping up their winter season soon. Lauren Teese recently had her senior project, the annual Battle of the Bows competition. Students all helped out to make it a success. Eisenhower Dance recently attended the state competition and were runners-up in both D2 Jazz and D4 Pom. Winter seasons are still underway. Ice Force Boys Hockey is beginning their playoffs tomorrow at 7 against Monroe. The winner of tomorrow's game will play at University School on Thursday. Last Friday, girls basketball celebrated senior night for Mary Kowitz and their youth night. Girls basketball earned a number 4 seed in the playoffs and will host Cedarburg next Friday at 7. In boys swim, Eisenhower sophomore Ryan Chen qualified for the state championship meet in both the 50 meters and the 100-meter freestyle races. He finished 3rd in both events at the sectional meet and at Homestead. Ryan will compete at the state meet this Saturday at Waukesha South. The Eisenhower cheer program will compete this Saturday at Hartford. Ike will be looking to qualify for the state championships that will be held in Oshkosh on February 24th. New Berlin United Wrestling will compete at the sectional meet on Saturday. Congrats to Eisenhower's Tommy Para and Ryan Gillis, who earned individual conference championships last week at the conference meet. Tommy Para followed that performance by winning a regional championship at the regional meet. Boys basketball plays at Badger tomorrow and hosts Wisco on Friday for their senior night. Their postseason bracket will be determined this weekend. Finally, Eisenhower Theater is taking the stage this weekend for the Mean Girls play. Performances for this weekend are on Friday and Saturday at 7:30 and then Sunday at 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have our consent agenda, which includes the notice, the approval of minutes of the board meeting on January 22nd, and the Descubre, Mexico 2025 field trip application. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Helmer to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. On to the regular agenda, we have a review and revisit of the fall data.
Sorry, Dan, that was me. Just want to remind the board, we are here to represent some of the same information that we presented back in November, as well as additional information that the board had requested. We are going to go through some of the slides rather quickly, just because you've already been provided that information. I think the part of the change that we wanted to share was to kind of talk a little bit more about what we do with the data once we have it. So if you recall, at the last board meeting, we had some teacher leaders as well as some of our principals kind of talk about what is it that we do with the various data points that we get. So that included, what do we do with our FastBridge data? What do we do with our forward data? And then what are we doing with our common assessment data? And we take all of that data, all of the data actually measures different things. And then we triangulate it to determine how we move forward, not only at the school level, but also at the classroom level as well. And so we would ask that you please hold off on questions until we at least get to the end of each section at a minimum. And then at that point, we'll kind of read the room to see if there are any burning questions, and we'll then just continue to plug away. But I've invited some of our teacher leaders and our principals to add to this presentation so that, again, we can get a better insight, or the board can get a better insight of how are we responding to the specific data that we are seeing. And so, so with that, one of the things that I also want to warn you about is this presentation is very long, but note that next fall when we present this specific data set, it will not include the FastBridge data that we are presenting tonight. So the FastBridge data will actually be all presented in 3 different presentations throughout next year. This one's just going to be extra long because it has the FastBridge data in it. Still rather long, but at least it won't be as long as the one tonight. But again, that's why I will be quickly moving through some of the data you've already seen. So this is the presentation schedule that we've shared with the board. And specifically, we want to talk about, again, that FastBridge data is our universal screener that we use 3 times a year. That actually informs our work on a more day-to-day basis, a more week-to-week basis. The state assessments, again, we have forward K through 8, the pre-ACT 9 through 10, and then the ACT at 11th grade. Those state assessments inform our school report cards. And then we also, with that, have AP testing and ACT data, which then eventually feeds up to our college and career and life readiness results and or specifically graduation. So one of the things, or some of the things that we did not include previously that we did want to highlight for you are student demographic history comparisons. And so this first slide here does show you a comparison of how we rank with other Waukesha County school districts as it relates to students that are on free or reduced lunch or economically disadvantaged. As you can see, we actually have trended towards being on the higher end in the county as it relates to free and reduced lunch numbers. Now, there is a kind of a tight pack of between 12.4 and 12.9, but we're actually even above that, again, to put us on the higher end of a percentage of students that we've had. I believe this may be the highest percentage of free and reduced lunch students that we've had since I've been here. And so, again, but this gives you at least a 5-year look back on those numbers. This is specifically percent of students with disabilities. Again, we actually seem to be on the lower end of this in Waukesha County, less the year 2021, 2022. And then percentage of English language learners. And I do want to highlight just a couple things. And if you look at the 2022-2023 school year, while a 2.4% number may not look like a lot, if you look at the school districts down on the bottom end, like McGuanago, Arrowhead, Muskego, Kettle Moraine, we are almost 4 to 5 times higher than they are as far as percent of students that are ELL. And so while it's not a lot, it does become significant compared to some of those other school districts that are on the lower end. We were a little surprised actually to see where Elmbrook was with ELL students. That was a bit of a surprise, but they do have quite an international community there for whatever reason. I don't know exactly what it is, but certainly that was an interesting piece to note. Graduation and attendance, we seem to be doing very well here. I will mention that these are projected numbers. While you may see for the last year for 2022, 2023, these are projected basically because they've not been solidified yet by the DPI. But these are our numbers of what we actually submitted to DPI. But our graduation rates overall quite well as our attendance over time. I do know that attendance has gotten the attention of a lot of administrators throughout Southeast Wisconsin and throughout Wisconsin. Obviously, attendance is a significant indicator of performance. And so we certainly want to make sure we measure this. This is very important to us. We actually take this into account But again, attendance, a 95% and above attendance rate is one of our goals. As you know, our district report card, we do significantly exceed expectations. Again, I'm not going to go through these slides. You've seen them before. We do very well as this specific benchmark of how we are assessed. We're one of the top districts in the state as it relates specifically to the school district report card. Now getting into fall FastBridge, and again, in the future presentation, this will not be included, but again, we wanted to make sure that we shared this with you. Fall FastBridge Elementary, we are seeing decent progress in fall A reading for third grade of those that are at or above benchmark for A reading. We are somewhat consistent as it relates to CBM, which measures fluency and accuracy in reading for students in third grade. And while we've seen a bounce back to a certain degree since COVID, we're certainly disappointed in the results of the slight decline that occurred in the year 2022 to 2023 with the third to fourth grade cohort proficiency going from 62 to 59. Overall, again, slightly trending in the right direction, but not happy with that slight dip with that particular cohort. Again, A math, we seem to have generally bounced back quite well from the COVID year, jumping up from the 57 up to the mid-60s in A math. And then again, seeing a nice trend upward with fall automaticity students at or above benchmark. Again, A math, we're starting to again see good numbers as it related to coming out of COVID and heading generally in the right direction. Again, a slight dip in that cohort in the 2022-2023 school year. And at this time, I'd like to have them actually introduce themselves when they come up. But members of our elementary team who will, again, you've seen this slide before. You've also seen a lot of the information here, but we want to be able to kind of share a story of what the data are kind of telling us and some of the insights from the school and building level as well.
Yeah, good evening. You know me, I'm Brady Ranke, Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning. Happy to be here tonight to share a little bit more with you. Amy and Royce are joining me again, and they'll introduce themselves momentarily. I'm not going to talk much. I just want to kind of rehash some of the things, some of the high points and low points that Joe pointed out. First, our FastBridge fall data for our third grade in reading actually is trending up. We had if you compare this year and last year, there's about a 6 or 7 point higher percentage of kids above the benchmark, which is something we're actually quite excited about. Overall, math was a little bit rocky in A reading. It was down just slightly, but we're really excited about the math automaticity. That's facts. Addition, subtraction. In third grade, it's probably not division yet, but we're getting into multiplication for sure. That's up, and that's kind of has been a point that we've been really working on over the course of the last few years. Since you probably saw on the slide, it was a bit lower. And then just overall, as Superintendent Garza mentioned, our fourth grade class, that's a class we're really worried about. We're working on that. We're digging into that. We're doing everything we can do to figure out what's going on with that class. And then just overall within reading, I know we've talked about this over and over. Last year, our big focus was making sure that everybody was implementing our curriculum with consistency. This year, we're digging in a little bit deeper to the assessments within that curriculum to make sure everybody understands exactly what we're trying to do, and then also so that everybody can respond to those things. And our coaches are doing a lot of great work. In addition to that, we've committed to get all of our K through 3 teachers, special education teachers, coaches, and even our principals trained in effective reading instruction. We're by July 1st, 2025, all of our teachers K3 will be trained with AIM through AIM Pathways to Proficient Reading. So we're really excited about that. I'm going to turn it over to Amy Stepneski to talk a little bit more about, okay, what does all this look like in our schools?
Hello, again, I'm Amy Stepneski. I'm the literacy coach and specialist at both Orchard Lane Elementary and I do want to give just a special shout out to Claire because she is one of my former second grade students and I'm proud to see you sitting here. So I just need to say that. So as we stated in our previous presentation, the purpose of our universal screeners in FastBridge are to provide a brief, reliable, and valid assessment that will identify students who may be at risk for poor learning outcomes, in addition to those who may be exceeding proficiency. Once students have taken the various FastBridge screeners, we then use the results to determine who may enter a formal intervention, establish flexible groups to address lagging skills or enrichment during our intervention time, or for the various resources it provides for skill development and practice that directly support student data. In fact, we are able to run reports that will suggest various plans for students who are exhibiting lagging skills that are directly aligned to the resources in FastBridge. Teachers and building leadership teams can use these reports to support their decision-making for formal interventions and informal small groups during intervention time. In addition to our specific FastBridge resources, teachers are also feeling confident in supporting FastBridge student data outcomes with our new curriculum. When looking at our ELA curriculum implementation at the classroom level, we have naturally seen some struggles with something new. Change can be difficult as everything is new. However, our teachers spent countless hours in coaching meetings last year, learning the curriculum and working through questions, timing, and a different approach to teaching literacy. Through guidance and reflection, we found that the consistency of a comprehensive curriculum was welcomed, appreciated, and embraced by teachers. In the past, teachers were left to interpret what should be taught in a lesson, and at times were subjected to guesswork and numerous hours of additional preparation to fill missing pieces. Now, with our comprehensive structured literacy curriculum, teachers are spending time on internalizing the lessons and skillfully applying their art of teaching, which is what engages and builds relationships with students for optimal learning outcomes and growth. Teachers continue to voice how they understand and appreciate the changes that have been made and see the difference in their teaching and student learning. They are also using the various intervention resources provided in our curriculum to respond to the FastBridge data as well. And finally, I want to share a recent experience I had in response to FastBridge testing and data analysis. Again, as previously stated, once we determine a student is in need of additional literacy intervention after assessment analysis, those students meet with the literacy coach to go through some diagnostic testing. The past couple weeks, I've been administering diagnostics to first graders. I want to point out that these students have been identified as needing additional support. But that being said, although these first graders need additional support, as I went through the diagnostic with them, they were talking to me about the words being assessed. They were identifying sound spellings. Just give me 1 second. They were identifying sound spellings in the words, telling me they had learned them in class, showing me how to divide various two-syllable words appropriately, and speaking to the various types of words with the appropriate academic language that I was testing them on. In my almost 25 years of experience as a classroom teacher, literacy coach, and specialist in this district, I have given numerous diagnostic assessments. I have never had students interact this way, engage in this type of conversation, or analyze words to the capacity during a diagnostic test. This was extremely eye-opening in a very exciting way. I want to stress again, these are students in need of support who were still talking through what they did know and identifying areas of what they were unsure of, only after a new approach to teaching foundational skills we just started last year. This is one example how I know what we are doing is working, and we are starting early to prepare our learners with the foundational skills necessary to be a skilled reader, which supports the years to come as they take the forward exam for the first time in third grade.
I love that story. That is a great story of success. I'm Royce Linder. I am a very proud principal at Orchard Lane Elementary. Just want to talk a little bit with you this evening about one of the things that we're doing across our district right now to ultimately build the capacity of not only our teachers, but also our administrators when it comes to the implementation of our new curriculum and its resources. So in order to have a robust and rigorous literacy program, we really need to make sure that everybody is on the same page, no pun intended. But one of the things we did this year is we built things called literacy learning walks. So what a literacy learning walk really is an opportunity for us as a building administrative team to work together with our literacy coach. Brady has joined us on some of our literacy walks, and we actually reach out to the teams and we talk to them about, hey, we want to come into your classrooms on this particular day, and we want to get a really good look at what is going on in the classroom, because we can see the things that are on the page, but we want to get the opportunity to see those things come to life, see the things that the students are being asked to do, see the ways that the teachers are making their decisions once they're like implementing that curriculum. So once we reach out and we set a date, then we kind of find out and want to make sure that we're all on the right lesson. So once we're on the right lesson, we have the opportunity to preview the exact same lesson that the teachers are using to plan their instruction for that particular day. So at Orchard Lane, we have basically three, sometimes two sections of each of our grade levels. So once we set that date, we get together and we get into those classrooms and we kind of divvy the time up, and we'll watch one block of literacy time, and we'll split that up into, say, 20-minute chunks. We'll spend 20 minutes in each of the classrooms as a full group. So we'll travel through and we'll see maybe the beginning of the lesson in one classroom, the middle of it in another classroom, and near the end of it in another classroom. So from there, we have that lesson right there with us. And again, we get to kind of see the cues that are in there. We get to see how the students are reacting to that, how the students are engaging in the activities that they're being asked to do. And ultimately, Amy talked a little bit about that art of some of the decision-making that teachers are able to make within that framework, within that structure of that lesson. Once that's over with, then we actually go back together and we talk a little bit about what we observed. And then it goes into a feedback cycle for the teachers. So sometimes that feedback can be done through email, sometimes that feedback can be done through a face-to-face conversation. But what it provides is it provides more professional dialogue around what is happening in our classrooms when it comes to literacy. Amy also mentioned the fact that with new resources comes a different experience, and there's a much different experience because the idea of doing a learning walk is not a new idea. That's something that we have been doing, but with our new literacy curriculum and our new literacy resources, there's just a different level of transparency, a different level of kind of background knowledge. When we go into the classrooms, we really can see what is expected to be done during that time, and we can have some professional dialogue around that. Amy kind of mentioned that in the past, sometimes teachers were having to make some decisions based on their interpretation of the narrative within the unit, maybe some of the things that they were seeing in the classroom. So what would happen is you could go into 3 different classrooms that are all pretty much doing about the same lesson, but it can look very, very different in each of those classrooms. So with what we have right now, we certainly have been able to see that there's much more of that guaranteed and viable curriculum happening not only within the individual classrooms of each building, but within the buildings across the district.
We'll hit pause here to see if there are any questions so far.
Yes, I have one question. So last year you guys were teaching fidelity with the new curriculum. How do the formal and informal groups that Amy that you talked about, how does that fit into
Sure. So some of the decision making that's being made, for example, was just in a 4th grade classroom, and part of the lesson asked the teacher to divide the group up into groups, or divide the class up into groups. It didn't say much about exactly how many, but really it just kind of gave some guidance around The students that maybe need additional support, want to keep those kids close to instruction, would be with the teacher, while other students might be working within like small groups or when they might even be working independently. So even in the different fourth grade classrooms we observed, both of those teachers were able to kind of leverage that opportunity in completely different ways to do what they felt was best for the students in their class. So that's kind of just one of the ways that teachers are able to kind of use those opportunities to create groups in different ways.
Thank you.
So my question kind of falls in that same thing, and basically what I'm hearing is there is some teacher autonomy that they're allowed to, that this isn't taught, like, right, like, you say this now, and it is actually, it's not like real strict rigor, and the teachers are allowed to teach?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I just want to clarify that with you too. The what is there for them, so the guesswork of what is necessary to help prepare our students to be skilled readers, that part they don't have to be guessing about anymore or interpreting, but they can put their art, their spin on how they take the command of their classroom, how they teach their children, when they need to take a movement break, when they need to reiterate something. Any of those things, yes, they are able to do that.
All right, thank you.
So it sounds like they have flexibility in taking breaks and those things, but I think you touched on fourth grade. Is there differentiated learning? So every classroom is comprised of a kid that reads at a 25% proficient, 50% proficient, 75, and 95. So in a classroom in first grade, are those students all learning the same lesson, or are they doing individualized learning? I know you had mentioned that they're breaking out, so some of the students that aren't performing at grade level, they're getting individualized attention from a reading coach or a specialist, an intervention program. But what is the differentiation of education from that student that needs a little bit of help to the student that's excelling?
So when you think about the time that we have during our intervention times or what I need times, that isn't just for formal intervention. It's also for our students who need, just as you said, those little bits of things, or our students who need to be challenged. So they aren't immersed in a formal intervention. They're in those small, fluid groups based on data, based on what teachers are noticing, and they design that type of dipstick instruction that's fluid and ever-changing during those times. In addition to the fact that in some of our younger grades as well, there are various times that are woven right into the lessons where teachers are taking small groups to say, oh, I need to meet with you and kind of talk a little bit more about this or help you out with this skill. And maybe tomorrow that's not going to look the same, but those opportunities are there.
So there is differentiated learning in that program?
In every
day classroom?
It is provided. I can't say to you that every single day it's looking the
Yeah.
same, but it is there and the opportunity is there for it. In addition to the times in our intervention time, which quite honestly, the great information that our teachers are taking from that time teaching within the curriculum and the ELA time, they're able to apply that very fluidly within those groups during intervention time as well within the small groups.
Okay, and then I think you mentioned something, I don't remember how you worded it, but it sounded like the curriculum is all-encompassing, like you guys aren't using supplemental materials. Is that?
Comprehensive.
Comprehensive,
Yes.
that's the word you used.
So we're not pulling from different buckets of things to try to fill holes. It's all there for us. Now, does that ever mean that in a time for an intervention group that we need to pull additional resources that are very tiered toward a child's needs? Of course. But those are things that are provided through FastBridge in response to data. And even our curriculum itself provides those things.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So are you hearing from the classroom teachers that they have the resources that they need then? Sorry. Maybe you should just stay up there.
Yes, I forget about the microphone. Yes, they are feeling much more confident with the things, they're there. Whereas before, where you might notice a gap in something, it was like looking for things or creating things or pulling them from different places. We are very research rich in our literacy curriculum. in addition to our FastBridge resources.
So when it comes to the fourth grade testing, and it sounds like you're still in the process of trying to figure out what happened with those scores, why they dropped from third to fourth grade. Can you give a little more detail as to what you are doing to sort of pinpoint what caused that drop in scores?
Sure. So the scores themselves do have the ability to kind of reveal, especially if, Amy mentioned too, like if those FastBridge scores are revealing that there is something that FastBridge has identified within those tests that they feel that they have the resources to be able to support. There is just like the screening to intervention plans that are created through FastBridge do kind of help us be able to dial into those specific skills and then have resources to be able to support instruction that can happen, whether it's a teacher running that, whether it's an SLA running that during those intervention times. Those are very, very targeted pieces. And then we're also going to be kind of taking a look too at some of the things, and we'll definitely get into it and into a little bit later in the presentation, just generally speaking about some things that we can do even within the enacted curriculum to be able to support our student readiness to kind of take on some of those more rigorous assessments.
Then going back sort of to the question about the differentiation and the comprehensiveness, I have heard some criticism about CKLA being weak when it comes to writing and weak when it comes to maybe like extra reading or like free reading and things like that. What have you heard about that? And would like to know what you think about as far as how the curriculum has been addressing those issues.
Absolutely. So I will tell you that all of our students each day have 15 minutes of choice reading time embedded that must be part of their day. So in addition to what they're immersed in within their ELA time, they do have that choice time as well, because they need to be just exposed to time to enjoy books and read books and be immersed in that literacy culture. So just to let you know along those lines, that is there, and we made sure of it before we even went into making the change. And to address the writing, one of the things that I will point out is that it's not always quantity, it's quality. We had students who were writing and weren't able to tell you the parts of a sentence. If they were writing pages and pages and pages of things that maybe weren't cohesive, but rather just writing and writing and writing. And while, yes, there was instruction there on how to change that or to grow, we're now seeing that we're focusing on sentence level writing, parts of a sentence, and gradually increasing the rigor. I will tell you, I see first graders writing cohesive paragraphs, which prior to that, we were not seeing all of the time. I will tell you that when I did a learning walk in a 6th grade classroom, the writing that was taking place, for the first time you walked around, every child was writing. They knew their claim. They knew how to support it. They were using our district resources to research and find other ways to support their thinking. There were children asking for rubrics. I want to extend this. So I did not see that before. There are times where when you are pushed off for 40 minutes of writing and you need to come up with something, that doesn't always happen for all students. That time on task of writing wasn't always there. This is very pinpointed and directed and really guiding students to become skilled writers.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next section.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the FastBridge secondary data. We have a different group of team members that will be sharing some detail. Again, I do believe we've done we've done well getting back to our pre-COVID numbers as it relates to where we want to be in A reading at 7th grade. We're seeing again a steady increase in A reading in the 7th to 8th grade cohort. And this is all information that the board has seen previously. Again, nice growth compared to 21-22. hanging in at about 80% of students being at or above benchmark. The Fastbridge auto reading, again, we're seeing a significant jump since 2020, 21 and holding steady. And again, while we did see a slight decline in 2020, 23, 22, 23 with AMath, we're still hovering around that 80% proficiency mark there. And again, similar trend with the 7th to 8th grade cohort proficiency levels. With automaticity, again, we're seeing a nice jump compared to where we were in 2021 and building upward. And seeing significant results of that with math automaticity and 7th to 8th grade cohort data. I'd like to ask the team to come up at this time to kind of talk and summarize on the points of emphasis for our Fastbridge for the secondary.
Hi, thanks for having me. While you saw an increase of our...
Who are you again?
Oh, sorry. I'm Kelly Kwiatkowski, Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning for the school district. While we saw an increase in our student achievement from fall 7th graders last year in 2022 to 8th graders this year in fall 2023 in A Math and A Reading, when examining our data, we saw that we still had some room to grow. And some of our neediest students, they weren't seeing the growth that we wanted them to see in specific interventions. So we switched up their interventions very recently in math and reading because they still had some deficits in the areas of pre-algebra skills, vocabulary development, fluency, decoding, and morphology. So that's what we're working on, and you're going to hear more from Mr. Buckley and Mr. Gerlach on larger scale things that we're doing to improve our scores.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Buckley, principal of Eisenhower, just down the hall here. It's nice to see you all. I had pages upon pages of notes, but then our elementary friends so well explained what Fastbridge is and how we use it. So I think I'm going to talk for a moment just about the systems level things that we do at the secondary with Fastbridge. And for us, that primarily affects students in grades 7, 8, and 9. What's important for us, which is a little bit different than the elementary experiences, that Fastbridge data needs to be accessed and understood by maybe not one teacher in a classroom in 3rd grade, maybe some other coaches who are, teachers who are specialists, but our 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade students sometimes have 7, 8, 9 different instructors that need to understand the needs of those students and how to best support them. So really for us, it's about systematizing support for students and then getting that information into the hands of the teachers so that they can understand what it is that's in front of them every single day in the classroom. We do that on a large scale, I would say in both at both Eisenhower and New Berlin West. Most of our teachers have SLOs, student learning objectives for their class, yearly goals based in Fastbridge results if they teach or instruct students at those grade levels. And they have beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year meetings with administrators like myself and associate principals to calibrate how those students are learning and whether or not they're making the growth that they should be making. Specifically Fastbridge for us and that kind of diagnostic dipstick that we give those 3 years allows us to kind of look at the trends and patterns in student performance that teachers are seeing and compare it to what they're seeing on an everyday basis in their class. An interesting side note, I had a conversation with a math teacher today who was just befuddled because one of her students is getting a B+ in their class, but was below proficiency on their Fastbridge score. It was just, this poor teacher of ours wanted to tear her hair out. And so what we need to do then is look at trends and patterns and how that student's assessment data has been over the course of their time as a student. And it really helps us address those type of students. I will tell you this about your school system. In our school system, we do an outstanding job for students who are high achieving. And I think we have a number of wonderful systemic supports built in for students who are identified as students who need supports, whether that be specialized education or anything at that level, or one of your MLSS supports that I think you have been talking about recently. It's those students who don't necessarily fit nicely into one of those two, where I think Fastbridge has really provided us an unexpected benefit in how we systematize and look at that data for students and then put it into good use at an instructional level for teachers, but also to support students. I'm going to step aside and let Mr. Gerlach explain a little bit more about that.
Hello, I'm Andrew Gerlach. I'm a literacy specialist at New Berlin West. So in addition to the use of Fastbridge to kind of track student progress over time, it's also very useful as a screener, right? To indicate which students are at above benchmark or below. And we have a really strong systems in place at both New Berlin West and New Berlin Eisenhower, our formalized reading and math support programs to get support to students who are in need of it most. As Mr. Buckley was talking about, though, we have a number of students who are found to be below benchmark by FastBridge, yet don't qualify for one of these formalized supports. And at both schools, we have teachers working hard through their SLOs, through their team meetings, through pulling kids into Flex to support those students. In one school, we identified, this was last year, a total of 93 students who were below benchmark, right, but didn't qualify for those reading support classes. And in a pilot program taught by one teacher, these 93 students in grades 7 through 9 met just twice a month throughout the year, receiving specialized instruction. And by spring, 46% of those students, so a total of 43 students, had moved from below benchmark to above, they had reached grade level, right? Which was just a really cool way, I think, that FastBridge is such a useful tool to identify and meet the needs of our students. So this year, we've taken that model of identifying these kids in the middle and providing extra support, and we've expanded that program to include many more teachers and to provide support to more students.
Any questions on this portion of the presentation? We can always come back, so we'll just keep plugging along. So let's get into Forward Elementary. The board has seen a lot of this. This one is the one that, this information is what brought us to kind of a conversation about making a change in our ELA curriculum and resources 2 years ago, is because we were seeing this decline in our performance, specifically in Forward ELA. And this was something that we had identified. We did try plugging holes within the previous curriculum that we were utilizing and just felt like we couldn't continue to plug things in and plug things, further within that specific curriculum. So again, that's why we recommended a change to the school board. But again, this certainly is of concern to us. Again, we want to take FastBridge data, Forward data, and our common assessments and triangulate all of this to determine how best to move forward. So again, while this is starkly alarming, this is just another data point in our review, in our process. I would like to highlight something that should be of note, is that as you look at the 3rd to 4th grade cohort proficiency level here, you will note that while the 2020-22, 2023 3rd grade to 4th grade proficiency growth is the largest growth that we've seen in quite some time, even prior to when we were using the previous curriculum. Again, we saw the most substantial growth and actually are at the highest level of proficiency in advanced in the last 6-7 years. Then you look at math, and again, we have been, the team will get into this, but this again concerns us to a point where we do believe we're going to need to make some adjustments to our math curricular resources and training, because not only have we trended downward, we are actually plateauing at a point where we believe we need to be making some adjustments in the resource and eventually training. This is cohort data, 3rd to 4th grade. And then just want to remind the board that Social Studies Forward is only tested in the 4th grade. Again, we're seeing a nice jump even to levels above where we were pre-COVID. And you're going to see, similar to that, we're actually right back to about where we were pre-COVID with our science. And again, this is only 4th grade as well. This is a slide that was asked by a board member to have us pull together. And let me just kind of walk you through If you look at like the 15, 16, I guess it would be like a orange number on the upper left-hand corner. If you actually follow that group, that takes that group all the way down to the 2020, 2021 school year. So the next block over for 16, 17, I guess we'll call it salmon color. You can see that group of cohort slide down again from 16, 17 all the way to 21, 22, and that's how you read the slide. Note that these are students in 3rd through 8th grade in ELA. And then these are some comparisons, and then within your document, you can actually dig a little deeper for other Waukesha County school comparisons beyond just the ones that we have here. And then we get into math. Similar chart. And then math comparisons as well. And so again, I'd like to ask the team to come up and talk about what we're seeing in the data as it relates to forward. Again, as we look to triangulate the information that we're getting in common assessments, FastBridge, and then now forward.
Yeah, the 3rd grade reading that Superintendent Garza put up is alarming. It's something we've been watching for a number of years, a decline in that, and that's why we decided we need to make a bold change. And I think Amy talked really nicely to some of the stuff that's going on. I do want to dig a little bit deeper, though, with that 3rd to 4th grade class now. When you dig into that data, about half of the kids that were basic or below basic, actually 55%, their winter FastBridge, they were not reading fluently and accurately to grade level. The majority of those students were more than likely, and I can't speak every one of them, but a lot of them were receiving intervention support and continue to receive intervention support. So we reasonably could have expected about half of that group to possibly not do very well in the forward. The other, about a third, about 33% of that group that didn't score proficient, on their previous FastBridge assessments, they were scoring in the 60th, 70th, 80th, even 90th, 95th percentile. That showed us that, you know, there's a group of kids here that they've got the skills. They just may not have the will to do the assessment. So we collaborated on a monthly basis with our other Waukesha County colleagues. And we talked a lot about, well, what are you guys doing that we're not? You know, we've implemented a strong curriculum, we believe. We've done a good job with implementation. And one of the things, among some other things, but the one thing that really stood out to us is we weren't preparing our kids very well to take the forward exam at all. And that may explain exactly why, you know, about a third of those kids that weren't scoring very well on the forward weren't doing very well, or were doing very well on their FastBridge assessments. So one of the things that we've done is we've had every one of our buildings develop a preparation program. Now, it's not drop everything we're doing and prepare for the forward assessment, but it's giving kids exposure to the types of questions that they're going to see. It's giving kids exposure to the technology things that we're going to see, and it's also giving them like some stamina in reading longer passages and those kinds of things in a test situation. Every one of our buildings is doing that and have started, and we'll be. I believe that our kids will be ready by then. I'm gonna let. Well, before I turn it over to Royce and Amy, I just want to highlight one more. I think important thing is that we should be celebrating that fourth grade class. I know there's last year's fourth grade class, this year's fifth grade class. I know there's a lot of concern, and we have a ton of concern, and we're working on that fourth grade class. But man, look at the growth that these kids in fifth grade, or now in fifth grade, were in fourth grade last year had. It's pretty tremendous, I think. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Linder, and he can talk a little bit more about what they're doing at Orchard Lane.
Thanks, Brady. And the things that I'll be talking about are the things that are really happening across all of our schools. So I want to talk a little bit more about that forward planning that Brady had mentioned. The forward planning really kind of came from the belief that high achievement on the forward assessment is not just a byproduct of quality instruction throughout the year. I've been doing this long enough to kind of like have gone through some of that mindset of like, hey, if you just keep your head down, follow the scope and sequence, work hard and deliver that curriculum, the forward will just take care of itself. But like Brady said, what we've learned is we've actually learned that some of the students in some of the areas, districts that are doing really, really well are doing more than just sticking to that curriculum. They're actually putting together some plans to actually get a little bit more engagement of all the stakeholders when it comes to that forward assessment. So for our schools, it might be about really talking to the students about what are some of the goals that we have for them and for us as a district, for us as a school, for them as a classroom when it comes to their work in that particular assessment. It might be it's about engaging our families, who obviously all have a very vested interest in how we do on those forward assessments, and building things even like within the school to present our school as the schools that value growth, that value achievement on these assessments, so that when our kids are walking the halls, the things that they're seeing in the hallways show that we value them doing well on those assessments. It's also about talking about building in better testing environments for our students. Understanding like what does a great testing environment need to look like for our students? Do they have all the things that they need to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward on those assessments? It's about making sure that they are engaged in strategy work. So that idea of, like Brady said, we're not necessarily chasing after content here. We're not trying to see like, okay, we need to make sure we teach this before March. It's not about chasing content, but it is about engaging students in strategies so that they actually kind of learn like what to do when they don't know what to do. So like when they get into those types of situations in those high stakes assessments, how do they have the grit to dig themselves out and be able to make sure that they are doing the best that they can do, knowing that on no forward assessment are students going to make sure that they are going to be taught everything that's on that assessment. But helping teach kids that they have the ability to be able to engage in those things and work hard in those things, and that we're behind them and that we're celebrating them is incredibly important. Now, along with that, those forward plans, Amy's going to talk a little bit more about what the enacted curriculum does for our students to help prepare them for those forward tests. On the math side of things, Joe talked a little bit about like our resources and our training. One of the things that we're really working hard on right now is engaging in those personalized resources to make sure that kids are using those regularly, because within those personalized resources, they might have the opportunity to engage in content that might not necessarily be within that scope and sequence prior to that assessment. But if they're doing those personalized things, the forward test might not be the first time that they see something that they've never seen before. So engaging in those is really important. And I will turn it over to Amy to talk a little bit more about how things are coming together on the literacy side of things.
So our assessment at the classroom level looks very different and naturally supports our work toward forward test preparation. The assessments, as you have heard, are very rigorous. This has been an area of struggle and recognized as a next step to dive deeply into after our first year of curriculum implementation. Our focus for all kindergarten through sixth grade teachers this year is on assessment. We are supporting teachers and administration in team and staff meetings with information, strategies, and time to dig in and reflect upon assessment. One very specific noticing from our implementation year was most of our students lack the stamina and test taking with the type of rigorous assessments that are part of our curriculum. In the past, assessments were often administered as separate skills in isolation. The opportunity for productive struggle, where we know learning and growth takes place, was not there. While those assessments addressed content and knowledge necessary for a skilled reader to know, we can all agree that various high-stakes assessments like the Forward and ACT do not mirror that type of testing. The common assessments we have now throughout each grade level build upon that type of thinking and approach, thus better preparing our students for tests like the Forward exam. Students are being asked to navigate and hold on to multiple skills and pieces of knowledge when answering questions. Even our smallest learners, when assessed on their knowledge of the content, have to hold on to meaning and apply it to an authentic situation. At first, this type of questioning was a struggle and thought to be kind of tricky. Now our students are rising to the occasion and our teachers see the importance of this type of questioning. We know we are moving in the right direction as our students are building their stamina and embracing productive struggle, while being immersed in rigorous assessments that are preparing them for the forward, next steps in their school career, and ultimately preparing them to take on challenges in life after high school. Additionally, teachers have been reflective, thoughtful, and consistent in preparing students to take on these challenges. They are responsive to assessment data and outcomes, determining if the need is for additional preparation and test-taking strategies, stamina, or knowledge of the content. This type of reflection has also helped to analyze preparation for tests like the Forward and testing culture in general, which is positive and impactful growth for our district.
Ellison, at the last board meeting, when the team presented, you had asked a question about, how can we support our students that may have some of that test anxiety when it comes to high stakes testing. Part of what we're trying to do is replicate those opportunities and segments throughout the year, first of all. Secondarily, we want to make sure, like I think Brady mentioned, that the technology is actually similar. In some cases, some students were actually taking the Forward exam on a device that they wouldn't typically be using. And so we want to maintain that familiarity, that consistency, and that planning so that when that event of that Forward exam occurs, we've prepared the students for that opportunity. And there's some consistency throughout as needed. Questions at this time on this section?
I have a few questions.
Yes.
On that same line. The FastBridge versus Forward, it sounds like they're not done on the same type of device then.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they are. But you have to remember, and like we talked about last time, it's a kind of a different test with a different purpose. So
No, I'm just thinking as far as preparing a student for.
yeah, absolutely. So the question types are a little bit more in depth on the Forward exam. I mean, if you guys, if you'd like to take a look at the Forward exam, feel free to there's a practice test that you could take if you want. But but yeah, they're just a little bit more in depth questions.
Okay.
And so or multiple part questions that necessarily aren't
Okay.
on the.
Okay. And how much time is a FastBridge versus a Forward?
Yeah, a FastBridge takes about a half an hour, maybe
Okay.
45 minutes for the A reading.
Okay.
I would say the Forward exam, 35 to 45 minutes.
Okay. And do you have to do the Forward test on the same day, the entire span?
No, our principals break it up.
Okay.
So for ELA, there's 3 sections. So they do 3, probably throughout 3 days.
Tell you that buildings do an excellent job of scheduling when kids are going to be taking these tests. So the time of day is optimal,
Sure.
Limited distractions, other things like that. So they know who's testing when
Okay.
to make sure things can be the best for our kids.
So not after lunch, before.
Right. Not at 3:30, right before the buses are coming. Right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
So it sounds like a lot of our concern is the readiness and the preparedness for taking these tests and getting these kids ready for it. So it sounds like something has changed from 5 years ago, because the numbers don't reflect that would have been a case that long ago. So I guess at what point did we get away from that? and why? And how did we identify that and now we're changing that back to something we did before? Did I interpret that correctly?
I'm not sure that we were doing it before.
I think I know what he's trying to get at. We had better test scores 5 years ago. Why? Were we preparing students better then than we are now?
I mean, yeah, it sounded like, it sounded like we're doing more test preparedness and we're saying that kids have anxiety or kids aren't ready to take these exams. But it sounds like we're not doing anything different than what we did 4 years ago.
Well, we entirely changed our curricular resource is one thing. And the resources and supports that we provide our students. We also use a different screener than we did 5 years ago, which we believe provides more in-depth as far as specifically to the science of reading and the specific curriculum that we have. That's changed completely as well as the test prep. But I'll hand it over to Royce and Amy, who actually have been here with us in this venture from 5 years plus ago to see where, why, and what.
And in addition to the things that Joe was just mentioning, which are all right on the money, one of the other things too that the variable that is difficult to take into account is the fact that the test itself has changed. So the test itself has become longer passages, more rigorous. So the way that we have ultimately prepared students needs to change, needs to adapt to the things that we're seeing kids having to take on. So that's one of those things too. That's like as the game changes a little bit, as that assessment really does become more rigorous.
I would just say at times, the test itself was different. We were map testing instead of FastBridge. It was a very different type of test. It was very, very long. It would take kids a very long time to complete. And it didn't always point us in the right direction of specifics, narrowing and drilling down like we can now with FastBridge. With that being said, I think, as Roy said, it was different, and the test is different and has changed.
When you say the test is different, you're referring to the forward, the state test?
Forward, yes.
Okay.
So you said map testing was longer, though. And how long, because I remember
it was.
map testing. I remember Tyler
Yes.
and Ella specifically complaining on those days. Do you recall how long those tests took?
Every student would can take a different amount of time as anything, but I mean, my gosh, there could be kids testing clearly over an hour, sometimes longer, and sometimes kids, you'd have to stop the test and continue on the next day.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly too, just the number of items. I mean, sometimes the reading assessment would have 50 some items in it, whereas in FastBridge you're more right around 30. So just the number of items in that assessment is much lower.
Yeah, one of the other significant changes was done on paper and it's now online, fully online.
When did that change?
That 5 years ago, 4 years ago?
Oh no, that's been a while. I mean, the WKCE was online. Boy, I don't know. It was a while. It's been a while because Smarter Balance. Yeah, I was gonna say it's been longer than that because because Smarter Balance was the first assessment that was online. Gosh, I don't know. It's been a while.
How long's the forward been online?
Yeah.
15, 16. Yeah.
Any other questions on this section? Any other questions? All right, then we will move into the next section, which is the forward secondary. And again, a lot of this is information that has been presented already to the board. I do want to apologize that we actually duplicated slides, that we actually included once again.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry. Slides 54.
Then I thought you guys had all of a sudden high school on.
No, slides 54 and 55, 56, and 57 are all the same ones that you saw previously because they're 3rd through 8th grade, which encompasses our elementaries and our 7th and 8th graders as well, when we're doing the county comparisons. And then I guess I'll ask the team to just briefly come up, and I know we're at a lot of time here, but we're kind of getting to the end. Real quick, if we could just summarize our forward secondary scores.
Yeah, we saw some growth by our students in the area of English language arts, mathematics, and obviously social studies. We didn't see the growth that we wanted to in science. I think it's interesting as a 7 through 12 building, upon reflecting the last 2 years, we realized that we goal set a lot to the ACT, the endpoint. We want our students to have a great portfolio if they want to go on to a 4-year or a 2-year school and to have that credential of success. We realized our 7th and 8th grade scores were lagging behind some of our closest neighbors. And while we had other school districts asking us what we were doing in the areas of math and reading around the state, we needed to ask our closest neighbors what they were doing that might have been differently than us. And just like elementary, a little bit of it was test prep, but it was also some item analysis that you're going to hear from Mr. Buckley and Mr. Gerlach here today.
Over there furiously scratching out things that elementary went over so well. So agreed at the systems level for the secondaries. Our forward assessment work really encompasses kind of 2 big ideas that ultimately intersect in what the students have placed before them by their instructors in getting ready for the forward and also curricularly. The first really is having our staff and our teachers understand the curricular, or have a curricular understanding rather, of what students have learned, what they are learning, and what they will learn, kind of what I believe Mr. Linder alluded to. Are they being assessed on things that they've already been exposed to? In some instances, we have 7th and 8th grade students who are 2 years advanced in math being assessed on grade level standards in 8th grade when they're taking geometry, and they haven't had 8th grade math in 2 years. So there's some inherent challenges there, so our teachers need to understand that and what that means in terms of getting students ready for that test. The second thing that we do and have been able to do because of the forward is look back longitudinally and create some item analyses over in terms of the standards and curriculum that we expect students to know and learn. Are they not scoring well because it's not something that we reinforce, something that we teach, or is it something that we need to teach better or different? And so those 2 pieces, along with the preparedness and readiness that we expect our students to have, for our teachers to prepare students to have, is really important. So the forward for us, in rather an ironic way, forces us to look backwards at what we've done within our standards and within our curriculum, but also with an eye on the future to get students ready. And I think Mr. Gerlach is going to talk a little bit about that. But to just add one small piece to what Ms. Kwiatkowski said, ultimately our job in any test prep is to give those students what we often refer to in our meetings and our groups as transferable skills. We're not looking to teach the content of the test. We're looking to teach our students how to be complex problem solvers and then apply that to the forward exam or the pre-ACT when they're in 9th and 10th grade or the ACT when they're juniors and beyond. So really that test prep for us, while do we use the content to help get there? Absolutely. But really the secondary focus for us is we want those students to understand how to read that exam, how to take that test, and how to be ready to problem solve their way through it in a far more complex way than maybe they have been in the past.
So we've been working with our director of curriculum and our principals and coaches across West and Ike to identify areas in our curriculum and instruction. So we're certainly not building the curriculum to the test, of course. But the forward item analyses do allow us to kind of shine a spotlight on our curriculum and identify possible gaps. So for example, over the past 2 years, only 49% of our 8th graders received credit for questions asking them, that was a very specific Englishy skill, okay, to analyze how particular lines of dialogue, right, are used to drive the plot forward or develop character. Wow, that was like a really interesting fact to see, because then we can reflect as teams and look at our curriculum. Do we need to bolster our curriculum or focus on that particular skill in our instruction? And we know from experience that direct action like that can be effective. So on the 2022 forward, so 2 years ago, only 40 to 50% of our 8th graders were answering questions correct that dealt with vocabulary, like the really vocab-focused questions. But in 2023, so last year, that number jumped nearly 35%, with 85% of our students, 8th graders, across both schools receiving credit on questions assessing the same standard. Okay? In the immediate term, we're also working this year, similar to what elementary is doing, to prepare our students for this year's Forward. Our students are going to be completing bell ringer activities right at the beginning of class to familiarize them with the format of Forward, some of the content of Forward. Like we saw today, actually, that the Forward asks it assumes that kids know technical grammar terms in English. Like there's a question that just says, identify the dangling modifier. And that's all, and they got to know it. So we're analyzing the Forward to notice things like that, as well as test strategies. Right. Happy to answer any questions about that, but those are the things we're doing at secondary to prepare this year for the Forward.
Don't ask me, but.
What is a dangling modifier?
There's a 100% chance he knows it.
Well, Ella would tell me that you would.
Yeah. I've had a number of your children. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
You don't have to
want,
answer.
You want,
No,
I
no,
can
I'm
tell
just
you. We could talk grammar all day. It's when the modifier.
No, Andrew, she was joking.
Now you won't know when you have a trivia question. You'll be like, oh, I should have got the answer.
I'm not voting to dismiss tonight until he answers the question.
Oh, just tell us.
And I will do it tonight.
I don't know.
Answer it. Go ahead. We were so curious.
Now we've confused him. Go ahead.
Singing in the trees, I look at the birds. Right? So who's singing in that sentence? Singing in the trees, this is hilarious that I'm
The birds.
You'd think it was the birds, but singing in the trees is followed by the subject I. So if you say singing in the trees, I look at the beautiful birds. The one singing in the trees is I. Yeah. Just dangling there. Okay.
Thank you.
Good point.
So moved.
Yeah.
Watch it.
I think we're going to continue to move ahead.
Yeah.
No, thank you. That was great. Thank you, team. In fact, I'm not going to get into the detail of the pre-ACT. All of this has already been presented to you and has been in your packet for the last couple of weeks. I just don't want to spend additional time unless you have specific questions. There is a slide that we did add, for example, on slide 65, we took a combo score of Eisenhower and West and what the average would be for the school district, as was requested. Again, we believe we're being extremely competitive in the pre-ACT and ACT. And then with advanced placement, these are all, again, we're very proud of what we're doing here. Things are moving in the right direction, in our opinion. And to the fact that we've received an AP Honor Roll Gold Distinction Award for both of our high schools. We've got our college and career readiness dashboard. And, again, we've provided this summary to you. I guess that we wanted to, again, redo this presentation for you as the board had requested. Again, we were able to kind of preview this presentation with our staff talking about at the last meeting how we triangulate the data, that it's all important. While we do look at one, it's not one priority overall. It's putting those pieces together, including our FastBridge data, our Forward data, and our common assessments within the classroom. I think it's good that we're able to bring to you a perspective that's different than just from us at the district level. We think it's important that you hear what's happening at the building level, how our principals and administrators are using that data, as well as what's actually happening in the classrooms, presented by Amy and Andrew tonight. And so with that, I guess, overall, again, we apologize for the length of the presentation. We wanted to make sure we got it right and gave you all the information that you were seeking. And again, next fall, next November, this presentation will be 20 some odd slides less because we will not be including the forward data. That would be included in a separate presentation. Any comments, questions, or concerns at this time? We appreciate the comments, questions that were provided previously by board members. Thank you for taking the time to do that. And also the questions that were raised at the previous meetings and even tonight. I mean, I think it's good. I think at the end of the day, we are all extremely passionate individuals and we all want what's best for the students and staff of our school district. We've got, great supportive board members. We've got great administrators. We've got great teachers and incredible students. I think we all want to see certain things heading in the right direction. We are all there, and we certainly have tried to do things differently. We're learning different things. Absolutely, we've not gotten it right, but we are putting our best foot forward in order to make sure that we are doing that on behalf of our students and our staff.
Well, thank you for doing this, for following our request to review the data and revisit it, and I really appreciated being able to ask questions. But I want to make sure, though, that all of our board members here have an opportunity now, seeing it within its context, to be able to give any additional feedback, anything you wanted to see that we didn't have in here, and anything you wanted to share as far as how we want to be getting this academic data.
Yeah, a couple slides, like 61, the ACT math. Yeah, this one, I mean, all these slides here, reading, math, can we get this in a bar chart where it shows our performance over, like our attendance one on the first one, where it shows our performance over 8 years, and then
8 years or 5 years?
I mean, it's all going to depend. So, like, so with COVID, we can't obviously just use the last 3.
Sure, Kelly, come on up.
So we can, but the pre-ACT Secure was the first time we took the test last year.
Okay.
So we could compare it to previous tests, like there was pre-ACT, then there was
Well, so-
pre-ACT Aspire, and now there's pre-ACT Secure. Similar tests, but not exactly 100% comparable, so we can do that for you if you
So maybe
like.
we can use the ACT. So any test that we have
Sure.
multiple years, so ACT on slide 65. So something like on those.
Yeah, we had talked about putting all of that similar to what we did with the attendance and the demographic data. We kind of liked how that looked too, so we can definitely do that in the future.
Yeah, because the attendance and the graduation was just us, so it's hard. You're looking at us in a vacuum. So, I mean, I know 98's a good number, but is that what everyone else is at, or is everyone at 99 or 94? So just seeing that trend with our neighboring districts and in the state, I think is also a good metric as well. And then I had another anomaly on 6.
Pardon me?
Slide 6, sorry. How did we jump 5% in 1 year and then drop 4%? Like, that number doesn't seem right.
Oh, slide 6?
Yeah. Students with disabilities. Doesn't seem possible to have a swing like that in 1 year. Unless there's some sort of like change in metric and how we're measuring that.
I will get back to you on that.
I mean, I could see a gradual trend, year after year, that number going up or down.
One of the things that we have talked about is, could we provide the board the information that it wants? So we, again, assume you take out the slides for FastBridge, and now we're at 50. It's going to be plus slides if we're going to be adding some of the ACT comparables, which I think, again, as Kelly mentioned, I think that's good information to have.
So with these, I don't know that we need to add slides. I think we're just adding content to slides.
Thank you for clarifying.
So, for example, slides 17 and 19, I noticed. It's the same slide. You're just adding more content on 19. It's the same 60, I believe.
Well,
Yeah,
the
actually, I think-
difference is, you know, it does give, this is a cohort comparison.
Yeah, but we could have that same data on there. You would just,
Sure.
you'd add another block on each side. So it would be a
Yeah.
little bit bigger slide, but.
I think we did that for a grade school.
We've had it before.
Yeah, where that was, the data was on one slide. And I know we have to pay a little more attention to the fact that we're looking at both year over year plus cohorts.
And I think like on 17, it says note, A reading measures overall reading. So having some context on there so that we have footnotes on the bottom.
Just quick question, because I remember when we talked through some of this, one of the things that the board wanted to see all students. So that wasn't kids, that was kids that were coming in, it's just everybody. And then, so this slide is all students. It's new kids, it's everybody. The one that you go back, just this one, is a cohort, right? So they had to be with us last year and this year. So it's a true comparison of the cohort.
It's
So,
interesting because the numbers are the exact same.
Close.
2021 is 63, 2021 is 63, 2022 is 62. So maybe it just magically happened that those.
Yeah, I can't speak, every 1,000 spreadsheets, so.
Okay.
Well, I guess the point that you're making is, can we look to consolidate slides when we are able to? I think we could.
And I mean, just looking at it too, where is it, the forward on 44. I mean, I know you're starting to get kind of small there, but trying to squeeze New Berlin in there. So it's really hard to look at us compared to the other districts when we have two separate slides, kind of toggling between them.
Can we do a line chart actually with those?
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
Turn that into a line chart where it's year over year for each school and then,
You lose the cohorts though.
oh, that's true.
That's why the
That's
color
true,
coding
never
works.
mind, yeah.
Just some thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, we'll work closely with Janet, as we did for this one, to just, again, be as efficient and effective and succinct as possible, but yet getting you the information that you want. Anything else, Janet and board members, on this presentation?
Nothing from me. Anyone else? Okay.
Great, thank you very
Thanks
much.
again.
Thank you. Thank you, team.
Up next. We do have an action item here on our board meeting dates. So we need to discuss and approve the 2024 to 25 board meeting dates, which have been posted in the packet.
Just want to point a couple of items for, we only have one meeting in December per what we've done previously because of the holiday. We typically, again, we're looking at making a change in March due to spring break. And then we have the Tuesday after Memorial Day is highlighted as well. And again, this has been pretty standard for the board, the previous board, so we recommend approval of the dates as presented.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Helmer to approve the meeting dates for 2024 to 25. Any discussion? Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. And we have a couple of action items from closed session.
I move to approve the superintendent contract renewal to cover July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2026 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Crosby and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve the superintendent contract. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. And then one more.
I move to improve the employment services report as presented.
I have a motion by Ms. Spindler and a second by Ms. Crosby to approve the employment services report. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Then we have our future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. in Conference Room E, which is here at district offices, and unless noted otherwise. Our next meeting is February 26th, then we have March 11th and March 18th. There's other important date to remember is February 19th. There is a staff in service, no school that day. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Helmer to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.